Hey girls, sorry for any background noise. I live in a house with people. So, welcome to the very first video on my channel ever. I'm Alexandra and this is Hogwash Hub. Now, I'm not going to pigeonhole myself at all because even if I only wanted to do one thing on this channel, I don't think I could. I make digital art, I animate. In fact, I'm working on an analog horror series right now. Sneak peek. I write music and I'm big into like analyzing TV and movies. I might make commentary, I don't know. And I write stories. To see more on me, you can go to my Instagram, but you're here for the writing stories part. So let's get into it. So I'm not gonna lie to you, I have a script. I'm looking at a script. Okay? I haven't memorized it. I'm not off book yet. Outlining and planning a story of any kind can be a very intimidating process because you have this idea in your head and all these little moments and important characters, but filling in the gaps between means world building, and that's difficult. So I'm going to take you through my story writing process from beginning to end using a novel I'm working on right now as an example. Now, you very well might have already done your version of this step in your process, but I just wanted to go over my own just in case. The very first thing I do when I have a story idea is create a Pinterest board. I know it might seem silly to some people, but it's seriously so helpful for me, so I can exactly visualize the atmosphere, characters, or even just the overall aesthetic. I organize it into individual folders so I can be as specific as I want, and this process normally just takes around like 20 minutes, if even. The next thing I do is create a playlist. Music is so integral to the stories I write. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I think I am. Oftentimes, it's what makes me want to write in the first place. When I'm creating this playlist, I imagine my story as if it's a show, and sometimes it is, creating a soundtrack in my head. Now, this of course doesn't have to be completely fleshed out at all. In fact, most of the time I'm looking for ideas to fill in the gaps in that story so I can figure it out. Now, I know it's scary, but you gotta open the Word document. I'm sorry. Now we are going to split screen the Pinterest board and the outline. Mine's already written, ignore that, and just blurb. I'm reading off my script here, so give me a break. This part is fun because you're basically writing the story with zero stakes of how good your storytelling is. The blurb can be as detailed or as basic as you want, but I suggest having the important details. What's the basic plot / story you're telling? Who are your main characters? Where are they? What's their motivation? What's in their way? What happens in the middle of their journey? And how does their journey conclude? Now, again, this sounds like a lot, but I promise this is one of the easiest parts of writing an outline. This next step is arguably the most vital one because you can't have a good story without good characters. They're what makes the story interesting enough that the readers care to listen. Sometimes there's even bad stories that people read anyways because they care about the characters. Create a characters category and start off with main all the way to side characters. So I have Phoebe, who is my main character first, and then all the way to her family and her dad, which is part of her family and friends. I begin with describing how they look, their style, their interest, and just the general idea of a person. And then I move on to their backstory, which I create a subcategory for and explain their motivation and their internal and external blockages. Once I have one of those for each character who needs it, I begin to organize my blurb. My story has an A plot, a B plot, and a C plot for good luck. I just wrote the quickest little description for each to get it on the page, and then I'll get back to them later. My A plot is the main big problem of the story. The B plot is all about the person's development with all the other characters, and the C plot is a twist that I'll keep in mind throughout the story to tie into the A plot later. Most people just have A and B plot, and I guess you could count C as part of A, but this is just how I organize it in my mind. Now on to the annoying part. I'm sorry. I now create another category titled Storyline, where I separate the hills of the story into acts. So what do I mean by that? Now, I'm sure we've all seen this guy 1,000 times, but it's only so common because it is so helpful. I separated my acts by the beginning low of the story, the rise/call to action, the adventure, the climax, and the fall/conclusion. Now, you don't have to separate yours so much. I know 5 acts is a lot, and I'm honestly just using the term acts very loosely. This is the part of your outline where the blurb should start getting fleshed out and kind of coming together. We still have work to do on details and expanding, but the storyline and flow should be pretty clear at this point. Next, I create a category titled Settings Plot. The title says it all. I just bullet point and world build on each place the characters will visit, focusing more heavily on the places they spend more time in or are more important. I also split screen the Pinterest board again to get a look at how I imagined these places in the first place so I don't stray from my original vision. For example, in this one I have my character's original home and I describe their town and local cafe, and I obviously have a bunch of other places, but these are just the important examples. Next, this part can be optional depending on what kind of story you're writing, but if your world has any kind of logic, time frame, or rules that is different than realities, create a new category. Mine is a fantasy book, so I'm having a magic logic explanation where I explain the origins of the universe, how the world around them works, and how it ties into my characters and story. Again, depending on what you're writing, this can be optional. That was a lot of work, I know, and I'm sorry, but we've pushed a very important boulder up the hill and we can finally move on to the really productive part. I suggest at this point, I know it's hard if you're really excited, but set down the keyboard, set it down, and take a step back from your work, at least for a day to rest your brain, or else you're going to twist yourself up into a burnt out, complicated writing pretzel. And pretzels can't write. They can only be salted or sugary or dipped in cheese. I really want pretzels now. All right, once you've finished all of this, I revisit my playlist, my Pinterest board, my blurb, just so I stayed true to that original intent and remember what ideas I had and what I wanted in the first place when I started. Now go through your plot this far and revise and clean it up, add things, take things away, and just make sure it's ready for our last step. Before your last step though, once you're done revising, put a word count goal and a chapter goal. If this is your first story or one of your first stories, I suggest just starting small because at least you're writing. You know, just because it's a small book doesn't mean it's a bad book. You don't have to write a dictionary thick book for it to be good. You know, a novel has to have, I think, at least 10 chapters. Correct me if I'm wrong, editing me, but yeah, and if a novel's intimidating, write a novella, or if that's intimidating, write a short story. You know, just build up. I know it could be kind of, oh, I want to write a big story. Build up, I know. Now I'm finally releasing you to begin plotting your chapters. The way I do this is I create a table on Word and I separate it by chapter and scene details. If there is any time to be too detailed, it's right now. If you're going to do chapter names, which I do, I think they're a blast, then write them after you write the chapter description, which might seem obvious, I know, but some people write a cool title and then they write based off that title. Don't do that. Write the title based off of what the chapter's about. Now split screen your outline with your table and begin describing by bullet point how each chapter is going to move, being sure to separate it in a way that flows, is interesting to read, and completes your chapter goal. I don't get too crazy detailed. I see people on this part of their outline adding like dialogue and stuff, and that's great. Again, be as detailed as you want to. In fact, it's probably better to be really detailed. Once again, I'm going to ask you to put down the keyboard, take a breather, and then come back with all of those ideas piled together and revise. Do this until you feel comfortable and confident with it, and you're done. Congratulations, you have officially plotted your story. Yay! Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope this was helpful. If you're working on a story of any kind, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And if you have any questions about something I may not have addressed, also leave that in the comments and I will definitely answer you. I don't expect this video to get like 10 million views and me be like, oh, I just couldn't reach everybody. This is my first video and it's about plotting a book, so I'll probably be able to answer all of you. Now, I plan on making all sorts of different stuff on this channel. I'm very excited, so if you'd like to follow my creative journey, subscribe and hit that bell so you're notified every time I upload, which is every time I'm in the mood for it. Well, that's gonna be it for me. Stay classy and remember, this was all just a bunch of hogwash. Bye! Well, that's nice. And she wouldn't listen. Exactly, like that's, like it doesn't take that much, it's kind of like common sense and common decency, really, like it's